A big thank you to Henry, I would just say, for just a lot of behind the scenes and in front of the scenes work, because just to visualize the behind the scenes, Henry every week comes in here and scrolls the Torah and makes sure that we know where we are in the Torah. So huge gratitude to that, Henry. It's and of course is up here almost every week with me leading the Torah service. So just big gratitude. So we are at the very beginning of Leviticus, and I'm very excited today. I actually was thinking about what we could talk about together, and I want to talk about theology. So many people might know that it seems like we have, okay. In our Torah, there's not just one consistent theology, one consistent conception of God and how God interacts with us or doesn't interact with us. There's actually lots of different theologies contained within the Torah, and as well as lots of different metaphors for God. So, sometimes on the high holidays, for example, people will find this concept of God as judge sitting on a high throne, rewarding and punishing to be kind of problematic, right? But my colleague, and most of you know her, Rabbi Tova Spitzer, wrote a book, and she came to speak here about this book, right? At some point about that she wrote this whole book about there's so many different metaphors for God in the Torah, and that there's eagle's wings, rock, water, a more human feeling God. There's all these different metaphors, and that our ancestors that we now in the modern age or postmodern age have gotten sort of stuck on this one metaphor of God as, a big bearded man in the sky who doles out judgment or reward. But actually, it's pretty clear that from the Torah that our ancestors did not have just that one metaphor of God. It's actually pretty stark. And also that our ancestors seem to see holiness as like another sense. Like we smell something, we see something, we touch something. We don't really have, we're sensing the holy in this space. But our ancestors seem to have that. We seem to feel ourselves a lot more distant, like we're over here and God is up there or something like that. But that's definitely not true when you read Torah for how it seems like our ancestors are perceiving the sacred. So since we're starting the book of Leviticus, I just want to talk a little bit about this very unique theology in the book of Leviticus, the priestly theology. Has anybody heard or explored priestly theology at all?
The first books were written in one sense. The first two books were, and the last three books were written, feel like they're written later.
That's great. Okay, so this is an overlapping thing that Joyce is bringing up. I'm really glad you did, Joyce. It's called the documentary hypothesis. Anyone heard of that? The documentary hypothesis? You learned it from Maya? Nice. Okay. So the documentary hypothesis says that if you are thinking that humans, it has this assumption that human authors wrote the Torah, and there's this assumption that there were 4 different voices that were written at different times and then compiled. Now, if you believe that God wrote the Torah, the documentary hypothesis is in tension with that, but you could still think of it like God is speaking in different voices or different aspects. But the 4 different voices, Joyce, that's right. There's what's called the Yahist voice that uses Adonai as a name for God, Yud, Hey, Vav, and Hey. There's the Elohim, it's called like the Elohist voice that uses Elohim. Oh, Hillary, you know the documentary hypothesis. Okay, and then there's the priestly voice, and then there's the Deuteronomist, the Deuteronomy voice. So those are 4, and the priestly voice actually is seen historically to be the latest, like chronologically in terms of time, the latest voice that was added in. Okay, but so there are lots of different theologies in the Bible, and 2 of them to compare that are very, very different from each other is the theology of the book of Deuteronomy and the theology of the book of Leviticus, which we're in now. And so what I'm going to do is just give you a tiny bit of sort of thesis statement of what these theologies are, and then we're going to look at them and see if we can see the differences. So Deuteronomy is all about covenant We're in a covenant with God. This is like our more common. God is king in some way. Also, God cares about us, like is loving to us, wants us to do well, cares about us. Okay. The priestly theology is that actually God is this extraordinarily powerful energy that's like not humanoid at all. There's like nothing human about it, and that we have to maintain that energy in ways that are safe and life-giving. And if a transgression occurs, that causes like pollution, like physical pollution, physical particles that have the power to pollute the Holy of Holies, where God is residing. Is everyone following what I'm saying? It's like a cleansing. And then rather than being a life-giving force, this energy that is God, which again, it's hard for us to even conceptualize it. It's not human, it's energy. Energy would end up being a destroying force. And so the rituals that all happen with sacrifices and priests and are all about cleaning. It's like a cleansing the holy space. And what is, if you think about it in Leviticus, what's the biggest cleansing agent? This is what material does a lot of cleansing? Fire, and also there's another one. Blood. Fire, blood. Blood is a cleansing agent. Okay, so this is like because we live without a temple and a physical altar. We here in the US in 2025 are like very, very, very far away from this priestly theology because we don't have a holy of holies that we think that God's spirit is contained in, or God's energy, or that energy is contained in. Okay, so I'm gonna give you two pieces of text to look at. One is from Deuteronomy, and one is just what we read today in the Torah, to look at these different theologies. And also you can just think about, you don't have to use these two that I'm giving you. You can think about stories from Genesis, Exodus, who God is, how God interacts with us in those stories versus what we read today. Okay, so in Deuteronomy, I picked out just a portion to look at that is pretty typical. I'm going to find the page. It's Deuteronomy chapter 24, verses 10 through 22. But you can really look anywhere. You can look in Deuteronomy. If you're curious, you can just pick for yourself wherever you want to look. But let's see where that's. So page 1129. Yep, 1129. This is sort of financial ethics, starting at verse 10 through all the way through 22. So you can read all of this on the next 2 pages, all the way to the end of the chapter. And then, so hold that page, 1129. And then where we were, Leviticus, what page were we on? Let's see, I'll find it again. Yes, 601. So let's start on 601, just where we started, and read from the beginning of chapter 5, just to let's say through verse 10. So 602 to the top of 603. That's a good place to stop. Does everybody see that? And you can just look at those two and compare. And then we're going to come back and, if we have time, talk about it a little bit. Make sense to everybody? So we're comparing these theologies. Yeah. So I invite you to just talk to someone, maybe try to talk to someone who you don't always talk to, if you feel up for it today. And we will take about, not so long, less than 10 minutes in Chavruta, and then we're going to come back. I want to take a few comments. If there are things that people noticed or had questions about or thinking about, if anyone wants to speak onto the mic, and if anyone is on Zoom and wants to say anything, then you can, we're going to go to Henry first, and then just feel free to unmute and let me know that you want to say something.
I kind of thought there was like a parallel between the two.
Oh, nice.
The one in Leviticus is more about if you do something that you think you're guilty of, right? Whether it's touching an impure person, whatever it might be. And then, of course, it leads into the sacrifice to make the sacrifices to purify yourself. Where the one in Deuteronomy is, in that particular instance, is financial, but how to treat a person who owes you money and not to take advantage of that person. So the parallel that I see is in both cases kind of a morality of how you should treat yourself, how you should treat another person.
Nice, beautiful, right? That's great. That's great. And there's actually more to say about. I'm glad you brought in morality. Yeah.
It's more that Leviticus is more of the process of purification, where Deuteronomy assumes that you haven't done the sin yet. But if this situation arises, this is what you should do and not the other. Like with the parent, like a child should not be held responsible for the crime of the parent. But there's no process of purification involved in it. And when you look at Leviticus was written when the Israelites were still, the slaves were still alive. In Deuteronomy, the slaves are all gone, and this is the next generation moving forward, except for Moses and Aaron and the priest, but everybody else is gone. So they didn't have a taste of slavery. Their fathers and grandfathers did.
So interesting. So maybe there's something deep here about different theologies needed for our people in different times, like given what we're going through.
40 years,
it's a long time. Yeah, that's great, Joyce. Anyone else have a noticing? We're going to talk a lot about this theology as we're in the book of Leviticus, because it'll be the background of sort of how we're talking about God. And Henry, I'm glad you brought in morality, because there's debates. Maybe I'll try to bring in some commentary. And there's lots of debates about whether this life-giving energy force is just sort of nuclear power that doesn't itself have an opinion about good or bad, but when we transgress, it gets polluted and just starts like putting bad things into the air, sort of. Right, exactly. That's exactly right. Whereas in Deuteronomy, it's pretty clear that God self has a sense of morality. And in Leviticus, it's a little bit like there's impurity. It's like you're saying, Joyce, when you touch a carcass and then you're impure. So you have something impure and there's all these details of the process of cleaning it. Does everyone see how it's very different? Is everyone just like kind of capturing the difference in it? Right. It says don't touch it. Yeah. Right. I'm excited to explore this all more. And if people, there's lots on the internet these days about these different theologies. So I invite you to look it up for me. And we'll talk about this more in the coming weeks, because we're going to be in Leviticus. But there's just something powerful that God can be different to different people and different to us at different times, like you're saying, Joyce. And there's something powerful that's contained in our Torah just about that, very starkly to me. God isn't one thing. And so that's the sort of zoomed out takeaway that I have from it. I just want to also, just before we close, I was finding while you all were talking, if anybody wants to flip, you can just listen to me say this, but if you want to flip to 1143, Deuteronomy chapter 26, verse 15, I just found a place where this is what it says. Look down from your holy abode from heaven, min hashamayim, and bless your people Israel. This is Deuteronomy, where God clearly does not live anymore in the Holy of Holies, but lives in heaven. Very different than in Leviticus, where I don't think you'll find that ever mentioned. It's like God's energy is contained in the ark, in the Aron. Exactly. When the cloud is there, you don't move. And right. And then in Deuteronomy, God is everywhere in the heavens, more like how we think of God. So very interesting to explore. Okay, thank you all for exploring those different theologies. And we are going to return the Torah to the ark.
Shabbat shalom.
Invite back up Henry and
Ya da da